Welcome to the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. I'm Zach Kaufman here with Ryan D'Amico.
What's up, man? I always love the intros. That I don't even know how to describe it. That's just that tone in your voice that because it's funny because it just makes me smile right off the bat and puts me in a good mood. So I'm always in a good mood when we get together and talk sports, but that even just takes it to another level. So yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I'm having a good week here so far, and hope you are as well. So yeah, how'd your week go? Everything go okay for you?
Oh, yeah, it was a good weekend. I know I got back around. I saw you. I saw some other friends, saw some family.
Really?
I was back in Pennsylvania for the weekend. So that was definitely a good time.
Yeah.
Definitely packed full with all kinds of events and seeing different
Right.
people. And then I traveled back down here to Virginia over the weekend. I'm glad you like the intro. That always hypes me up too, getting into it and getting ready to get started.
Yeah, real quick here before we start diving into the sports stuff, let's talk a little personal life here. So, like you mentioned, this is just will be a funny story for the listeners out there. So, as you mentioned, we got together on it would have been Saturday morning, and it was supposed to be a group of us to go out to breakfast and just kind of catch up, like friends do from time to time. And it kind of just got dwindled away to only three of us as, people had some stuff to do and whatnot, conflicting schedules that happens at this point in our lives. So it was only myself, you, and then one of our other good friends, Chaz. And all three of us are extremely loud individuals. And when you get us all in a room, it's even louder because we try to talk over each other, and it's pretty crazy.
We get each other hyped up. It's a great time.
Exactly. So we're out at this restaurant. It's kind of like it's called the Manor Mart. It's basically just a little down-home country restaurant. It's like a local spot, and good breakfast, cheap. It's just one of those all-American places. So we're there. We get there around 8:00. We're sitting there. We're talking. All of a sudden, this older couple walks in.
Well, first off, let me stop you and say,
go ahead.
We are aware that we are loud and somewhat obnoxious. So we tried to be respectful of other people and sat the whole way in the back, the very last table in the back. We set ourselves up what I thought was in a good way, but continue the story. Absolutely.
No, that's a great point. We sat all the way in the back, away from everybody else that was in the restaurant at that point, purposely so we wouldn't be a distraction. And then literally 10 minutes into us sitting there and talking, this older couple walks back, and wouldn't you know, out of all the tables in the restaurant, they sit at the table immediately next to us. And it's funny because I remember it significantly. I look up and say, and kind of laugh and say, that's probably not a good idea. As they sit there, and we carry on and we're talking, we're having a good time, and the lady then eventually turns to us and says, "Excuse me, can you guys keep it down? I don't think you're aware of how loud you are. We can't even hear ourselves talk at the table." And we're just kind of like, "Yeah, I mean, sure, that's not a problem. No big deal. We'll try to keep it down. Being real nice, politeful, not don't want to cause a scene by any means." And then it's funny because go ahead.
She was a lot more aggressive than you just sounded there. Like she was definitely.
No, she was.
She was definitely hyped up and not happy at all with it.
She was not happy. She was pissed. And it's funny because the husband was sitting there just like a little, I don't.
He just existed.
Yeah, it was non-existent. I wanted to use profanity, but I neglected not to. But and she just took charge. And you're right. She was very you could tell she was annoyed and pissed off. But and then we look over 2 minutes later, and they're both just sitting there on their cell phones, not even talking to each other. It's oh, okay, great. So you made the point to try to get us to calm down and not be as loud, and you guys aren't even talking. Well, what's up with that? So, but I mean, as it is, we kind of continued and did our own thing, and but yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny that we basically got shushed at a local restaurant on Saturday morning.
And two other things to add. As you mentioned, with that group, we're loud and outrageous. This is the first time anybody's said anything to us. We've had bigger groups. We've definitely been louder. We've been more out of control.
And it was only three of us. Usually there's 8 or 9 of us.
Yeah, this was like the low side. And second, I found out later, which I thought was hilarious. Apparently, my youngest sister, her former high school coach, was also in the restaurant and overheard us talking. Like, I was talking about my sister, and she was live updating my sister the entire time of like, hey, this guy was talking about you. Oh, now there's a lady yelling at him. Like, this is this ever.
It was classic. I wish that lady would have came up and said something to us, that New Year's sister. I thought that would have been funny. Just to kind of, it's just funny how it kind of came full circle. Definitely one of the more interesting breakfasts I've had at a restaurant in some time. Question. That's for sure. That's for sure. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of open with that, just kind of something funny that was, definitely pretty enjoyable over the weekend. But hey, the food was good. I enjoyed my breakfast. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I was certainly happy with it. It was just that one part threw off the mood a little bit, but then we were right back at it, and they were back to texting on their phone, and it seemed like it turned out well for us. Right. I was happy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, Jack. As we transition to the sports world here, as we do on this podcast, if you're new, we start out with college football. Give you a little college football recap of what happened the past weekend. In the slate of college football, and then we transition to the NFL. I kind of spearhead the college football talk, and then we both kind of go hand in hand with the NFL, with Zach leading the way. So as we look back to college football last weekend, Zach, it was week 5. A lot of interesting things I felt like happened last weekend in the college football world. We'll start it off, which was late Friday night out on the West Coast. USC traveled to Wazoo, Washington State, in a pretty big matchup. It pinned the 5th-ranked Trojans versus Washington State, who was ranked 16th at the time. And a lot of people looked forward to this matchup and thought this was a game that USC could struggle with and possibly lose. And they did, and they go down 30-27. Washington State kicks a field goal with only a few seconds left. Kudos to USC for going down the field late and tying up the game. Washington State kicks a field goal late and then forces a fumble then when USC gets the ball back. And I'll tell you what, this USC team, this has kind of been a long time coming here on this short season, because they have not looked particularly good, USC. Sam Darnold, who look, everyone's talking about being definitely a top pick in next year's draft. Only had 9 interceptions last year. Already has 8 this year. I mean, he's really kind of been struggling. Not the kind of season you expected. They're leaning more so on the run game. So USC really been struggling, and it's going to be interesting to see where this team goes after a tough loss on a Friday night out in Wazoo. So have you been seeing how kind of Sam Darnold's been not maybe living up to expectations?
I haven't got a chance to watch him yet, but he's still remaining towards the top of draft boards. I'm keeping updated on that. I'm very, very curious to see how that turns out. But I think that's a lot of it is based on his skill set. A lot of times we see that in the NFL where they're not as concerned with their specific stats and how they do in college. And you might see a great college quarterback that either doesn't get drafted or gets drafted very, very low. And they don't have that skill set. They don't have that NFL body, whatever it is that they don't see, even though they were successful in college. And it's kind of the opposite for Darnold, where he has exactly what scouts have been looking for, and it seems to hold steady there towards the top of the draft. It always is hard to determine until you get close to the draft. You know what teams will be at the top, but there's a lot of quarterback needy teams, so it's still an expectation that he's going to go very, very high, if not number 1 overall, even if he's struggling a little bit here this season.
Yeah, he should. I mean, that's the expectation, barring just an absolute drop-off where these numbers just kind of really plummet and the interceptions begin to outweigh the touchdowns. Then maybe you kind of start to worry. But like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head where he has all the intangibles that scouts look for. He is that prototypical quarterback. So, I mean, he's completing a high percentage of passes, almost 1,400 yards through 4 games. Excuse me. So, I mean, he is definitely having a fine year. It's just those interceptions you kind of wish were down a little bit. So USC, obviously they struggled last week. We'll try to right the ship this weekend. Because USC, they have a tough schedule, man. They don't have a bye week this year, which is really uncommon. Usually teams have at least one bye week. They do not have any bye weeks this year, which is pretty crappy if you're a USC Trojan fan. So that's rough for them. So
and we see that same thing in the NFL now with Miami and Tampa Bay. They got their games pushed back to where their bye week was supposed to be, and now they're going to have 16 straight games after having a bye week 1. So that definitely makes it tough for any team, whether college or the pros, to have to do that week after week after week without any kind of break.
Yeah, that's brutal for NFL teams. I mean, NFL teams, they obviously play more games than these college kids. And to have to go through that many games straight, and especially if you're luckily one of the teams to make the playoffs and you got to continue to play and you got to play wild card weekend. I mean, that's just unfair, basically. So, tough position for those teams for sure. Second game, Zach, I wanted to look at was another team that just disappointed and has disappointed so far this season. And maybe not from my expectations, but just kind of from the hype that they have kind of gotten the last couple of years from the national media. And that's the University of Tennessee, the Volunteers, who get shut out at home by Georgia, 41-0. This was Tennessee's worst home loss since 1905. I mean, this team is – I don't know how many ways you got to say it. This team's just not very good. Butch Jones, I don't think, is that great of a head coach. I think that's really been seen the last couple of years. I mean, he's recruiting well. This team's recruiting well. It should transfer to the football field. I mean, at what point is he going to take this talent, develop it, and put a good product on the field? I mean, you play in the SEC Eastern Division, which basically your only competition year in and year out is Florida, and they're not even that good this year. And you still can't take advantage of it. Tennessee is in absolute shambles. I expect this to continue the rest of the year. They're not just going to all of a sudden right the ship and win out from here on out. So, and don't get me wrong, Georgia's a very good team. Georgia's looking like one of the best teams in the country. But you should not lose 41-0 if you're Tennessee. I mean, you look at some of the numbers in these games, Dak. I mean, this Tennessee team had 7 first downs. They had 142 total yards. I mean, it's just 4 turnovers. Like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you don't expect teams like Tennessee to do. But like I said, I'm not surprised because I thought Tennessee was really overhyped, and I'm not a big Butch Jones fan. So Tennessee's really struggling now, and Georgia just continues to chug on. And Georgia's a team that we talked about last week. Watch out for Georgia going forward, man. This is a team I think that can really compete for a national championship, even though they are starting a freshman quarterback.
Yeah, and
anything to add there?
Tennessee was a team I think we were both down on early in the season, and if I'm not mistaken, you'll have to let me know. Weren't they ranked in the top 25 heading into the season?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. They were. Absolutely. They were, I think they were ranked 25th or 24th. They were ranked 25th to start the year. So they were ranked to start the year.
Because I remember them being up there, and there was just nothing really stood out as a highlight player for me. Anything Correct. Like that. It was a lot of kind of average to above average all the way around.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail around the head. That's kind of what they are. I mean, not sure why they were ranked to start the year. I question that with a lot of teams to start the year. I mean, this team lost their best player in Joshua Dobbs, who went on to get drafted to be brought in by the Steelers. And their quarterback position was absolutely a question mark coming into the year, and it showed. They still can't figure it out. So Tennessee is just, I mean, they're in shambles, and like I said, we both kind of expected it. So yeah, Butch Jones has got his hands full out there. 2 more games, Zach, and then we'll move on to the NFL. The next game, another team that has just disappointed and is off to a really bad start is LSU, the Tigers. I mean, if you're LSU, it is inexcusable for you to lose at home to the Troy Trojans. I mean, you just don't do that. I mean, you don't lose to Troy if you're LSU. that talent gap. Look, while Troy is one of the better kind of mid-major teams in the country, and they have been for the last couple of years, they almost went into Clemson last year and knocked off Clemson in Death Valley. They actually go to this Death Valley at night and finally pull off the upset and knock off LSU. But, I mean, this game wasn't even really close. I mean, I know it says 24-21, but Troy was pretty much in command in this game the whole time. LSU doesn't score their first points till late in the third quarter and then to score 14 more points in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's embarrassing. I mean, they looked flat. They couldn't tackle. The offense is a mess. I mean, this goes back to when this team decided to bring on interim head coach Ed Orgeron as their full-time coach. And at the time, I didn't get it. He reminded me of former Michigan head coach Brady Hoke, who's a good recruiter. He's a good rah-rah guy, but he's just not head coach material for a big-time school like LSU is. And I think he's really showing that with his 3-2 start. You talk about teams that were ranked to start the year. I mean, they were ranked number 13th to start the year. Now they're not. They're going to be out of the rankings after this week. I'm kind of at a loss for LSU. We talk about recruiting when it comes to college football. LSU recruits at the highest among high levels every year. There's no reason why they should be losing at home to Troy. So another just big-time disappointment for LSU. Anything you want to add there, Zach?
I don't have anything for those teams specifically. I was curious, moving forward here as we're heading into week 6 for college football here, what are your top 2 or 3 teams you're really excited about moving forward? I know you talked about some of the teams you're really down on and have been disappointing, but who really stands
about college football? Who am I looking forward to and is standing out to me in college football, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, look, that's pretty easy. I'll be honest with you. You have to look at, first and foremost, I think you have to look at a team I just talked about in the last game, Georgia. I really like what I'm seeing from this Georgia team, man. I mean, big time. I mean, I know they're starting a freshman quarterback. They're actually starting a backup freshman quarterback who didn't even start the year, but their quarterback at the time got hurt, and now you insert this kid who is really poised and just doesn't play like a freshman. And that defense really is just kind of not carrying them, but is kind of their calling card right now. That front seven is just fantastic and fierce. So I really like what I'm seeing from Georgia. Other than that, there isn't really another team that's kind of really wowing me per se right now. Washington State, I thought that was a fantastic win that they had the other night. A team that I'm actually going to talk about next, I think, which is the last game I'm going to talk about, is probably the other team that's really kind of wowing me, and that's Clemson. I mean, what Clemson's doing this year, man, I did not see coming, at all. I'll be honest, I was on a podcast in the beginning of the year doing an ACC preview, and look, when I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. I have no problem doing that. And I projected Clemson would have 3 losses. I did. I thought that they were really going to miss Deshaun Watson. I thought they were really going to miss Mike Williams, and I thought they were really going to miss Wayne Gallman. Mm-hmm. That hasn't been the case. I mean, their offense hasn't been anything. It hasn't been lights out by any means, but that defense, I mean, what they're trotting out there week after week after week is just, it's unprecedented. I mean, I believe I saw a stat. I think they're the first team. They might be the first team in history, if I remember correctly, to beat 3 straight top 15 teams. And because I mean, that's what Clemson did. I mean, Clemson went into Virginia Tech on Saturday night. They went down to Blacksburg and just waxed the Hokies. I mean, the Hokies didn't stand a chance in that game. So Kelly Bryant, their quarterback, he's been good. I mean, he hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad. He's just been good, and he's been solid. He's been reliable, and he's doing what he needs to do for this team to win. But I mean, you look at that defense, man. I mean, you look at the points. Look at the points this defense has given up all year: 3, 6. 21, that was to Lamar Jackson, so 21's respectable. 7, and then 17 on Saturday night. I mean, this is one of the best defenses in the country. Will continue to be as the year goes on, and it's going to be interesting to see how far this defense can carry Clemson, because I knew their defense would be good. I didn't think their defense would be capable to carry the offense like they're doing. I thought they were really going to miss the missing pieces and miss the best player in this team's and this college's history in Deshaun Watson. So kudos to Clemson for what they're doing. So for me, Clemson and Georgia really standing out to me early on in this season. And look, we're almost halfway done with the college season. 1 or 2 more weeks, and we're at the halfway point. So, college football is starting to come into shape here.
Yeah, it definitely is, and those are some good recommendations there. Keeping an eye on Clemson and Georgia. I'm impressed by Clemson as well. I know that came up in our preview heading into the college season of the major guys they lost that you went over with Watson, Mike Williams, and then Wayne Gallman at running back. Three major positions there on offense, and they're still a top team and playing extremely well. It's very impressive to be able to fill in for those type of players.
Yeah, and just as we look forward to next week, Zach, like we do here, give the listeners a couple games to look at and follow along with, if not be able to catch a little bit next week. 3 matchups I'll look at. West Virginia going on the road to TCU, a battle of ranked opponents here. TCU, who is a team I could have brought up in that last question you had for me, a team that's surprised. This is a TCU team that wasn't ranked to start the year. They're off to a 4-0 start and have climbed themselves all the way up to the number 8th ranked team in the country. They bring in West Virginia comes to town with Will Grier and that up-tempo offense. This is a matchup that could see a lot of points and could be kind of one of them shootouts that we do see from time to time. So, but TCU's defense has kind of been the X factor for them this season. They're scoring points, but the defense under Gary Patterson has really shown up this year. So that's definitely a game that I want to keep an eye on. I think the listeners should. College Game Day from ESPN is going to be there Saturday morning, so definitely want to keep an eye on that one. Another one that, look, in the beginning of the year had a lot of hype because of Florida State's slow start at 1-2. That hype's kind of dwindled. Plus, it got pushed back because of the hurricane. This game was supposed to be week 3. It is now pushed back to this Saturday at 3:30. Miami, ironically enough, the Hurricanes go to Florida State and take on the Seminoles. Rivalry game, big-time rivalry game. Anytime it's a rivalry game, crazy things can happen. And you have the 13th-ranked Hurricanes who are 3-0 and undefeated. They have to go to Florida State. And look, Florida State, they're 1-2. They're not going to win any national championships. I mean, DeAndre Francois gets hurt in the opening week, and their season just kind of goes down the drain before they even get started, basically. But look, this is a pride game, and I think Florida State would take some serious pride and some enjoyment in knocking off Miami here and giving them their first loss. So that's a game that I'm going to have my eye on at the 3:30 slate. And then night game-wise, I'll be tuned in, obviously, to the Michigan State-Michigan game. It's a night game, something that really doesn't happen much at the University of Michigan. They've only added lights there in the past decade. I think this will be their 4th night game, if I remember correctly. So big rivalry game. The last time there was a game at home against Michigan State, that the wild punt as time expired, and Michigan State returned it to the house, and it was it was a nightmare. It was one of the worst games I've ever been a fan watching. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Another rivalry game where Michigan State has looked pretty decent this year, except for the one game against Notre Dame. Let's see how they fare against their rivals with Michigan. So those are 3 games I'm looking forward to probably the most next week. And looking forward to another exciting Saturday of college football.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. We really appreciate it. We've changed some things up based on some of the feedback we've received, so we'd love to continue hearing your feedback. As we continue to build this platform with our podcast, it's very helpful to us if you can share it with the people you know that you think would be interested. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great week.